Hello and welcome to the Unleash podcast, brought to you by Embrace the Power. Unleash your potential, make your impact. I'm your host, Amy Lee Miller, and joining us on the show today from New Jersey is high-performance coach and philosopher David Kaspar. David has a Ph.D. in philosophy and has written and published 2 books and numerous articles, and also teaches at Rutgers University. David, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Amy, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Very excited to have you. So we met briefly at an event, and right away we jumped into a deep conversation, which is my favorite kind of conversation to have. So I wanted the opportunity to continue that here today on the show, and also to share what you would like to share with on some of your philosophy with our viewers, of course, with the goal of inspiring others. So we will do that, and no pressure.
All right.
I'm sure it'll be interesting. Okay. Actually, real quick before we dive in, I'd just like to give a quick shout out to one of our show affiliates, Planetary Design, your one-stop destination for all of your coffee brewing and storage needs. So head on over to planetarydesign.com, and that'll be linked below with the promo code 1886. All right. Excited to dive in here with you, David. So I'm a coach and a writer myself. I'm really passionate about self-development, but Stoicism is something that I'm only just starting to research. And then you are doing something super unique. I think it sounds very unique, combining Stoicism with the art of performance psychology. So can you break down for us what is Stoicism and what is performance psychology?
All right. Well, Stoicism is an ancient philosophy. Around 300 BC, it officially became a school. And the Stoics drew from the works of Plato, Socrates, and other ancient philosophers. And they, as a school, they had about a 500-year run until about 200 AD.
Okay.
Soon after Marcus Aurelius, who was the emperor, died. He was also a Stoic. Mm-hmm. And there are certain distinctive things about this philosophy that make it attractive to many people today. And it's currently enjoying quite a popular boom. There are, many groups with 100,000, 200,000 members just discussing Stoicism. And the goal of Stoicism is to enable people to live their best life. And it sees living that best life in the following way: making your psyche, your soul, your psychology, however you want to put it, as excellent as possible. And the word that the ancient Greeks used for this state of mental excellence, they used the word virtue.
Virtue, okay.
So being virtuous would mean that you are courageous, not just some of the time or in special occasions, but it's the steady disposition of your soul. Your personality is a courageous one with self-control, and so forth. Now, performance psychology is a pretty recent discipline. It's a academic psychological discipline, and what they try to find out is what enables the best athletes in the world to perform at their best consistently. And so there are the key parts of it are, aside from their training and physical preparation, how they gear their psychology to be the best performer possible. And there's a bit of an interesting story as to how I came up with my own personal development system. It's called High-Performance Stoicism. Mm-hmm. For many years, I had been thinking ahead toward to making a great high-performance program. And a couple years ago, I was going through all that I read, all my notes, my own experiences, experiments I had done on myself. And I started to develop what I thought was an outstanding high-performance personal development program. And then as I was going through it, I said, okay, well, the Stoics have this. Okay, the Stoics have that. And then I started to realize that it kind of came in a flash of insight in my mind. I said, Stoicism just took over my program.
So, oh my goodness. So you had, just to interject real quick, so you had the idea to come up with a program to help maybe just the everyday person who wants to become a high performer. Your program initial coaching goal was to focus on performance psychology, but then you realized that Stoicism also could or did play a key role as well in becoming a high performer.
Yes, and what happened is that became the framework of everything I was doing. And there's some things that are in Stoicism that everybody would be familiar with today from personal development, that the Stoics were the first ones to really develop it. And I'll just give you a couple examples. Reframing, improving improving your perspective, taking a larger universe wide, you could say, perspective. And if something bad happens to you, don't say, Marcus Aurelius says, don't say, something bad has happened to me. Say, bearing this well is good fortune.
Right. So, I've started to research Stoicism, and that's one of you can let us know if it's the key concept, but I understand one of the concepts of Stoicism is focusing on not what happens to you, but how you respond. Is that the key framework?
That is certainly an important part of it. And one of the things, and I was interested in a lot that was going on in personal development with Stoicism as it was becoming increasingly popular. And some of what I saw, I liked, and some of it I said, I don't think that's right. But even though I've been teaching some Stoic texts for about 20 years in classes, I hadn't done a very deep study of it at the time. But the more and more I got into it, the more impressed I was, which is different than most philosophies I've experienced, where it can look really good in the beginning, but the more you look into it, the worse it is. But I was impressed that new things kept coming up that I said, oh, the Stoics really had a great idea about this, concerning all aspects of life. But you are right in terms of what most people initially look for in Stoicism is, this is going to help me to deal with unpleasant situations better, to not get thrown off course. And it is how you respond that matters the most. And another key point that people that pick up the idea of how great Stoicism is, that many people focus on is some things are up to us and other things are not up to us. And what happens is not up to us, but how we respond definitely is.
Right. Yeah. So I was researching. I understand that. So the goal is, one of the aspects of Stoicism, the goal is to respond well, and to do so with one of the four main virtues. So let me know if I have these correct. So you want to respond to situations with courage, wisdom, temperance, and what's the other one?
Prudence. Justice.
Justice. Yeah. So I'd love to hear specifically how these four virtues, so courage, wisdom, temperance, and justice, play a role specifically in becoming a high performer.
Okay. Well, I think the one that's probably most obvious to talk about is self-control or self-restraint.
Okay.
Because think about how many people say, I get distracted once I look at my phone and then I'm off in another world. I go into a YouTube time warp when I know I should be working. So Stoicism will say that you do want to work on your self-control, but a key part of it is many people think about being self-controlled in particular situations, such as the distractions at work. But Stoicism really says, well, you're really not going to be self-controlled unless you think about the whole of your life. You become self-controlled in many areas. And the process by which you do this, just like we said with a couple of the key parts of reframing, right? Reframing the things that are distracting you, how you see what your phone is when you're at work, and also how, working on how well you respond to things. There are going to be a couple of things that will help you to develop your self-control. But for it to really work well, you have to start to see, okay, those are the areas I know I need self-control in, but there's other areas in which we let ourselves get away with not being self-controlled, right? Being self-indulgent. So the Stoic view is, yes, it's good that you want to work on it in one area, but you will be much stronger in that area if you try to become a self-controlled person, and that's going to take practice and time. So that's just an example of how you would start out thinking about self-control.
Because I was also curious if one of the virtues is maybe more important than the others. I get the idea is to incorporate all of them, but do you feel like temperance is maybe the most important one, or at least a good starting point for somebody who wants to start trying to incorporate Stoicism into their life practice?
Well, the Stoic view is actually, in a sense, there is just one virtue. It's just the total state of your psyche or soul. But each one of them deals with different things. And so the way they describe temperance or self-control is that has to do with choice. And so you want to start looking at your choices a little differently, a little more seriously. What you choose to do on a daily basis is important.
Yeah.
And so if you're beginning a exercise program and you don't want to go, as many people point out today, it's better if you just go to the gym. Go to the gym just so you follow through with your choice, even if you don't have a great workout.
Yeah.
So the one beauty of this idea of the unity of the virtues is they claim that anytime you're exercising one, you're exercising the other. And this might sound strange because we think of courage as being something having to do with very dangerous situations. The Stoics have a much wider view of courage, and they say courage is the virtue that has to do with endurance. So even when you say, okay, I told myself I'm going to the gym today, just following through, going to the gym, going through the workout, you're working on your endurance. So there's a sense in which there's actually a 4-in-1 package. When you are just to other people, when you are kind to people, if someone's being unreasonable with you or someone's being rude, if you can hold back and deal with what they're going through rationally and be just to them and tell them that whatever you think of what they're doing, but without you blowing up like people usually do, right? People from New York and New Jersey. We don't mind blowing up.
Hey there.
Yeah, we're ready to go.
Yeah, I want to circle back to something that you said about choices, because I think we sometimes can get into a habit of beating ourselves up, or maybe not wanting to look at some of our past, if we want to call it a mistake or just maybe a choice that did not lead to the desired outcome. We don't necessarily want to look at that, but the power in looking at our choices, the ones that led to the not desired outcome, is that we can. Our choices create our circumstances. So we also then have the power to create better circumstances.
Exactly. No, I agree. And one part of what you said is very important, because one of your goals is to, and I think this is the best way of putting the whole philosophy in a way, harmonize with reality, right? They put it a different way, harmonize with nature. And so some of the things that means would include, okay, what's the truth about my life right now? Look at it seriously and welcome the information that you get. and connecting back up with what you said about how to respond well to things. One part of that is that you want to make the reality around you so important that you just harmonize with it. There's no fighting the circumstances that are, in a way, they're out of your control. They're more, in a way, many times bigger than you.
Yeah.
So just harmonizing with it and say, okay, I got fired. What does that mean? What are my options? Maybe what might I have done differently so as not to get fired? And just look at things objectively. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds to me, because like I mentioned, I've just started to research Stoicism a little bit. So my knowledge is limited, but I am finding, just like you mentioned, that the more I look into it, so there may be some initial resistance. And then the more I research, I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense. But it sounds to me like Stoicism, like a lot of the self-development techniques today, like, for example, focusing on only what you can control. That's something that I talk a lot about too. And I know a lot of other speakers and authors do. So it sounds like Stoicism parallels, or maybe other coaching and self-development and positive belief systems maybe adopted some of their practices originally from Stoicism. Do you find that there's a lot of parallels within Stoicism and other self-development tools or ways of thinking?
Yes, and I think, and part of what I described as a kind of this insight I had, and a kind of mental shift, seeing that there was so much in Stoicism that people were talking about today that I hadn't recognized before because I didn't research it that deeply. Mm-hmm. And I'll just give you one other thing that the Stoics are very big on, which is that if you do a little, so on the example of self-control, if you start to be more self-controlled with the little things in your life, and you are consistent with that, then pretty soon you can take on bigger things. Mm-hmm. You have to start somewhere. And start with something. They even talk about starting with something small. Yep. And keep doing it. Don't discount the importance of that.
Right. Yeah. And then when you set a small goal, that's, part of SMART goals. It makes a really big goal, or what can seem daunting, the self-development, the choice to really start improving your life can seem daunting. But if you just break it down, one step at a time, and then you set a small goal for yourself, it's much less overwhelming. And then you've also really raised your belief in yourself, your confidence. You achieve this and you're ready for the next thing.
Right. That is a key part of it. Whatever you do, mm-hmm. just keep going and be confident. And there is something to this idea of just trust the process. Yeah. Because thousands and millions of people have done similar things before. Each of us has done it in different areas. We just didn't recognize what we were doing when we were, say, becoming a musician when we were in junior high school, but you just have to do the same thing with your personal development and just make sure you put in the reps, so to speak. Yeah. And you're definitely moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. You mentioned that each of us has done this or succeeded at accomplishing, something in another area of our lives. I think self-reflection, both positive and focusing on the outcomes that didn't turn out the way we wanted, can be such a great tool, because yes, there is something in your life that you have succeeded at. So if you reflect back on that, what was your process getting there? So then just take and apply that to the areas in your life that are maybe not working out the way that you want. I want to again circle back to, you mentioned you didn't use the word resistance, I did, but initially when you started researching Stoicism, maybe some things that you didn't agree with necessarily, but then when you researched more, then you started to see the value in those concepts. So I was researching and came across that critics sometimes will say of Stoicism that it encourages the practice of suppressing your emotions. And I love the full spectrum of human emotions. I'm a writer, both fiction and nonfiction. I think all emotions can be beautiful and useful, with the exception direction of one. I don't think that there's any use for guilt. Maybe somebody would disagree with me on that, but I'm wondering your perspective on that, Stoicism, and if it has anything to do with suppressing your emotions. And then also, is there ever a time to just get angry, where it's just,
Right.
okay. What are your thoughts?
Well, the Stoics have a particular view about emotions, and there's what we could call a group of negative emotions that I think the best term for it would be a disturbance of the mind.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So things like fear, things like depression, and so they include things like lust in the general sense, where your rational handle on the situation is out the window because you're so overcome with, okay, lust for power, I want to crush this person, or lust for money, okay, I'm going to screw someone over just because you want it so badly. So those are the things that they're talking about. And a key part of this is, and so they describe it as a disturbance of the mind that reason cannot overcome.
Okay.
And we all know situations in our life where we're out of control in terms of, let's say, losing at something, getting fired, having a breakup, and then we are in trouble for months.
Yeah.
And so the Stoic way of dealing with this is pretty simple, but it's not quite suppression, because the goal is not to let those emotions arise at all, the ones I just mentioned.
Oh, wow. And how do you do that?
Okay. So the way you do that, is that you don't have the judgment that will create the emotion. In other words, so here's let's say that you're going to be fired. And so the first thing people are going to do is they're going to get afraid. And there's a lot of other emotional things that come with it. But the Stoics believe that what causes your fear is you actually genuinely believe it will be bad. So as long as you don't make that judgment, you won't be overcome with fear. In other words, and you could just think about it in a crazy hypothetical situation. If just let's say that you have a crazy uncle who says, I'll give you let's say they, for some reason, they say, I'll give you $1 million if you stick with that job, even if they fire you, I'll give you $1 million.
Oh, looking pretty good.
So then if you get fired, you say, oh, that's great. Now, what we know from numerous interviews and biographies and autobiographies is that there are people who will say getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Absolutely. A lot of times I always like to say, along with so many other people, challenge equals opportunity. So it's all about perspective. And I think it can be key to, if something is bothering you, focus on why is this bothering me? Sometimes because that frustration is showing up oftentimes for a reason. And maybe it is to show you a better process, a better way, because you're ready to grow to that next level. So later it ends up being a positive thing that you're grateful for. So it sounds like the same kind of concept. I'm liking Stoicism more and more the more we talk.
You're going through the same thing I did.
Yeah.
And just to pick up on your last point, because if you take an objective perspective about it, you could see, okay, I have, just like we talked about, I'll look at my resume, I'll look at my track record. Oh, I've done a lot of things before. I have pretty good credentials. I have excellent reviews at my work. So looking at it objectively, it's better to say, okay, I'm going into a new area. And if you think about, well, now that I'm not in this job, what are the upsides of it? Because the Stoics think any situation you're in, there is an upside for what's happening.
I believe that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So as hard as it might be to believe sometimes. But the thing is, you might say, I've always wanted to do something else. And then now I have an opportunity to do that. So the problem comes in, the panic comes in, is because we have total belief that it's a bad thing to happen.
Okay.
And then we're invested in that. And it's that first judgment of it's bad when fear really sets in, and then it's hard to tamp it down. So the Stoics get ahead of anything that's going on, just in case of, okay, let's talk about anger. Someone is disputing something with you, and you could see they're having one of those disturbances, right? You could see it right in front of you. If you have a Stoic way of seeing it, this is part of what I would tell a person who anticipates a confrontational situation. Okay. I would say, okay, here are some things to note. Everybody is interested primarily in their own self-interest. Sure. Number two, all human beings, unless you're the proverbial sage or wise man, as the Stoics put it, everybody is a fool, right? So something of a fool.
Ignorant of something. We don't all know everything, especially what somebody else is thinking or going through and how they came to their perspective. Yeah.
That's right. And the fact that we could get set off by little things demonstrates some foolishness, because, we wouldn't want people outside of our inner circle to see how we acted based on a little thing. So the next thing is that that's how it appears to them. They can't act on how it appears to you. They're acting how it appears to them. So if somebody comes in the room, looks at me, they say, I just don't like the way that guy looks. We get into discussion. They're having a bad day. They're foolish. And then when you start to keep those things in mind as it's happening, you're less likely to be angry.
Yeah, that sounds like one of the four agreements. Everybody's coming with their own perspective, so we don't want to take anything personally, because what others do has nothing to do with you. So again, these interrelating concepts that I've studied, and from other areas, other books. I love that. That's great. And this is, I even love that you said that you kind of reframed these negative emotions as disturbances, just even starting to look from a different perspective, at things that maybe trigger us, or, feelings of anger or frustration, whatever, viewing that as a disturbance. I think just that alone makes it much lighter and easier to respond differently.
That's right. And the problem with some of these emotions that we're talking about is we enjoy them. We enjoy being angry. We feel, self-righteous,
entitled.
Entitled.
We feel right, but really we're hurting ourselves by carrying this, anger around. We're not hurting the other person. They're probably not even thinking about it.
So you just hit on another important point on Stoicism. So the only good thing is virtue. The only bad thing is vice. And so if you get angry, if you start having evil thoughts about the person who's obviously caught up in some emotion, you're only harming yourself.
Yeah.
Because then you leave the event. We were at a event together, and somebody from that event left, and they were angry with what someone said. They were slighted. And you only ruin your day. A lot of times, you don't even get the victory you seek by getting angry. So
yeah. And then you're carrying that with you. I like to say, there's a time to focus on what's bothering you. I call it focus on the frustration, so you can identify the problem and a solution can present. But then there's also a time to focus back on something positive, something that makes you feel good. And I celebrate every day, not to sound cheesy, but I really do celebrate every day the power in choosing our focus, because, and I'll catch myself too. I'll think about something that happened before and I start to get agitated. My heart starts speeding up. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. What are we doing here? Just shift your focus. And instantly you feel better. I mean, that's how powerful the mind is. So it sounds like choosing your focus is a big element of Stoicism as well.
Yeah, and it definitely is. And I think one of the best, this is more of a modern saying, but I think this one helps people perhaps more than any other thing to think about in a tough situation, focus on the solution, not on the problem. And you find just within a matter of minutes, you're already making progress. You're figuring things out. And I think there's a lot of talk about the mind in personal development, but I think people underestimate how powerful it is and all the different ways it can be used. And part of that is coming to know how to use it in all kinds of different situations just by learning some basics about human psychology and I think the Stoics have the best view on that.
That sounds very, very useful. I mean, for not just wanting to, definitely if you want to become a high performer. And I think that's important. These, elevating yourself, elevating your state of mind, learning how to respond better, learning to solve your own problems. All of these aspects are so empowering. And I think that they're important in becoming a high performer, because when you have all of these little things bothering you and you're not showing up well, that's absolutely going to hold you back and it's going to distract your focus. And when you're working toward those bigger goals, you need to identify and clear all of that stuff out. And then you've got that much more energy, you're showing up better, so you can go further faster. So
exactly. And picking up on what you just said, what I call a high performance person is someone who has mastered their craft and master the craft of living in such a way that they can use that craft, the first craft, for whatever ends they want. So we know a lot of people who are, high performers in their business, but what Stoicism adds to it is you really want to be a high performer for your life as a whole, because how many celebrities, how many sports stars mess up their life by doing something outside of it that is counterproductive for what they really want?
Right.
So it's much harder to master your life. That's why we don't have a number of people that we're aware of today in public who we say, oh, that person is virtuous. So the Stoics are realistic about how hard it is to really attain that. But what I've discovered myself, and I think anybody who starts to practice it seriously and in a optimal way will also discover, is that you start to see glimpses of excellence in little things that you do. And this, let me take this back to self-control. So, for example, and so let's say that let's say it's nighttime and you want to enjoy a couple drinks. Now, as most people know, alcohol has a special property that if you've had a couple, there's a little voice that can emerge, says, okay, have some more.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I discovered for myself, because, every once in a while I like to enjoy a couple beers, 3 more, maybe more, for a little reward, is that you start to think, and this is the way I describe when you start to see yourself being more self-controlled, new options emerge in your mind. In other words, you actually see them as a attractive option, and you say, hey, that beer was really tasty, but I know that my writing tomorrow, my research will be diminished by this much. So you know what? I don't want that second one. And there's not really any forcing yourself to do that. So I call it a glimpse of excellence, because when you start to do things that are a little more courageous, you take risks you didn't take. You start to see things as, yes, I do want to do that gutsy thing now. Whereas I would have had to have pushed myself, 4 months ago. Now that's an attractive option.
Right. So these little choices then can create drastically different, better outcomes in your life. So, David, it has been so great talking with you today and broadening my perspective and our viewers' perspective on Stoicism. I'm excited to dig in more and continue learning more. What is, for those of us who would like to get in touch with you to learn more about your high performance Stoicism coaching, what's the best way to get in touch?
Well, the best way to get in touch is at high-performance-stoicism.com, one word.
Okay.
And that will take people to a Facebook group I have called Stoic Practices for Success. And that's the best way to get in touch with me today.
Okay, great. We've got that right up here on the screen, and then we'll have it linked below as well. So that sounds great. I definitely look forward to checking out your Facebook group and would love to continue this conversation another time. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. You are welcome. Pleasure to have you. Absolutely. And thank you to our viewers. Really appreciate you guys as well. Definitely come back to the channel. Embrace the power for more inspirational interviews. And until next time, stay curious.